Welcome back, everybody. Oh my gosh, this is one of those page turners that's going to kind of knock your socks off because you're going to go, huh? What did they do this time? Oh my gosh, Kat, are you excited about what's coming?
I'm very excited about what's coming. This is going to be good fun. I can't wait to hear people's reaction to this chapter.
I hope that people will leave comments because this truly is one of those chapters where things really start ramping up, and we will talk about it as soon as you get through listening. So we'll be right back. Chapter 19. No! Beatrice screamed. No, 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 no! Euna heard the shrieks and ran up the stairs as fast as she could. There was a loud crash. She burst into the room and found Beatrice pacing back and forth, holding a blood-stained cloth. Behind her, through the open door to the bathroom, Euna saw shards of broken mirror scattered on the floor. Beatrice looked at Euna and held up the cloth. Euna gazed back with an expression that communicated pity. Beatrice's rage subsided and morphed into uncontrollable sobs. Euna ran to her and held her. Beatrice's wailing caused her to begin coughing, heaving, and gasping for air. Her eyes went dark, and her legs began to give away. Euna caught her by the waist and redirected her so that she fell onto the bed rather than crumpling to the floor. Euna managed to remain calm. This was not the first time that her queen had delivered such an outburst, but it was the first time she had shattered a mirror. Euna reached into her skirt pocket where she kept a vial of smelling salts, plucked off the cap, and waved the powerful ammonia under Beatrice's nose. She reacted and opened her eyes. She began to cry again, but this time with less severity. "Why, Euna? Why?" she finally managed to ask. "I don't know, Your Majesty. I just don't know." Euna felt helpless. There wasn't an answer to her question. Euna went into the bathroom, navigated the broken glass, and brought back a cool washcloth. She folded it and placed it on Beatrice's forehead. "Maybe next month," Euna said. "Let's hope." Beatrice spent the next few days struggling to find her way out of depression. She had yet to produce a child who would succeed her on the throne. She was 36 years old and consumed with worry that time was running out. Her marriage to Alfred was loving and passionate. That wasn't the problem. But after 12 years, the fact remained that she was still childless and overwhelmingly desperate to produce an heir. Worry was the fuel that fed her obsession, and it was her obsession that consumed her waking hours and filtered into her nighttime dreams. The queen found herself sitting at the window, observing the world outside the walls of Castle Hill. She became fixated on a few innocent puffs of white clouds floating above the city. She spent several minutes watching them drift and dissipate, then rebuild and assemble. "Rain clouds," she said. "Their purpose is to produce." She pointed her index finger to the sky and stirred it in the air, willing the clouds to move. The wisps danced and swirled at her whim. This obedience pleased her, but it also angered her. "You will rain. You will produce." She began slowly stirring the air with her entire hand, and the clouds swelled and blackened. Angry venom slowly began spewing from her soul. Within minutes, clouds had sprawled over the city and grew to great heights. The dense black clouds obscured the sun, and the tempest she had created began boiling in the sky. Beatrice blew as hard as she could, and violent gusts of wind whipped through the city. She poked her finger into the eye of the storm, and lightning spiked the ground. She let out a scream, and a deafening thunderclap rattled windows and shook the earth. She then planted both feet firmly on the floor, took a deep breath, thrust both hands at the billowing turbulence, and screamed, "Rain!" At her command, the clouds burst, releasing their bounty. An ocean of water dropped from the sky. Those who were caught in the deluge scrambled to safety. Every street in Anza quickly became a rushing river, seeking to escape its imprisonment from behind the city walls. As quickly as it came, it was over. Beatrice slumped into her chair. "It rained," she said. "A rain cloud is supposed to rain." Beatrice woke up, drenched in sweat. She lay in bed replaying the dream and then got up. She looked over at Alfred, who, in the darkness, appeared to be sleeping soundly. She rinsed off at the sink. As she held the soap, she noticed the familiar scar in her palm, rubbed it, and gasped. "Of course!" she exclaimed. "The dream! Calixta!" There were still at least 2 hours before dawn. It was the first time in weeks that she had felt truly hopeful and excited. She rushed down the stairs to Euna's door and knocked. "Euna, wake up!" She didn't wait for Euna to let her in. She opened the door and ran over to her bed. Euna had been in a deep sleep and was trying to bring herself into the waking world. "Wake up, Euna. I need you. I need you to go find Calixta and tell her to meet me." "But are you awake? Do you understand me? I need you to find Calixta. I must see her," repeated Beatrice. "But nobody has been able to. You have my permission to take anyone with you that you need. Go wake up Nelson or Jamison or both. But I want you to be gone by dawn." "But Calixta hasn't been allowed to." "I'm allowing it. I'm the queen. I say what is and what is not allowed. She will have the answer, Euna. I know she will. She can help me." Beatrice moved toward the desk. "I saw it rain, Euna, and I need it to rain. Calixta can make it rain." Euna didn't have a clue as to what Beatrice meant about the rain, but knowing her obsession, it would surely have something to do with a baby. She was very apprehensive about Beatrice involving Calixta in anything that had to do with the royal household. Euna would have been apprehensive about anyone having an association with Calixta for any reason. Calixta was legendary throughout all of Heir as being a bitter and poisonous person. She was known as an outcast, but in reality, she had cast herself out. Those who had been around her when she was in her youth knew bits and pieces of her story. There were very few who knew the entire truth about her. She had been tried in the Mage Guild court and had been charged and convicted for suspicion in the use of dark arts. It was not a civil trial, but the verdict stripped her of all titles, and she was excommunicated from the guild. The trial didn't prove that she had actually used forbidden arts, but under the laws of the Mage Guild, a conviction of suspicion was enough to disallow any future association with its members. The very name, Calixta, carried a mystique that was both feared and respected, meaning she was left alone. Wild stories about her were told in the pubs. Some said she left in anger because she was banned from Castle Hill. Others said she had lost her mind when she mismeasured an amount of bitter shroom powder for a potion she had made and drank. They said the overdose twisted her mind to the extent that she could no longer function in society. Children commonly used her name when telling scary stories. Parents disciplined their children by telling them that if they misbehaved, Calixta would come and take them away. As to her whereabouts, those who ventured into the deepest part of Valendale Forest said she lived on a rocky island in a swampy lake, and that it was impossible to reach her house because it was protected by various forms of enchantment. She was the most notorious person in all of Heir, and she was only in her 30s. Euna didn't think it would be too difficult to locate Calixta. She did, however, expect Calixta to turn her away. She wanted to reiterate all of these things to Beatrice, but she could tell that anything she might suggest to contradict her would be futile. Beatrice had already made her mind up. She wanted to see Calixta, and that was the end of it. Beatrice sat down. "Where's your paper? I need to write a note. Dear Calixta, I know it's been a very long time, but may I see you? Will you please set aside your animosity? I want to be on friendly terms, and I promise I will make it worth your while. Meet me at 10 o'clock, Saturn's Day morning, by the old well. You know which one. I will treasure the opportunity to see you. Yours, B. She dripped melting wax on the envelope and used her insignia ring to seal it and gave it to Euna. Euna looked at the note in her hands. Her feet were frozen to the floor. Go on, please, Euna. I've had a vision as clear as day, and I need you to get this note to Calixta immediately. Euna was not afraid of Calixta. Her hesitation wasn't that she didn't know where to start. She just didn't want to start. In Euna's mind, everything about this situation was heading straight for disaster. Still, she had been ordered to deliver the note, and therefore she would. She decided to wake up both Nelson and Jamison, the two chamber guards who lived in the castle. She was going to need their help. Euna could trust them to handle any situation, and for this task, they would be invaluable. What is she up to now? Asked Nelson. Has she lost her mind? Perhaps, said Euna, but we don't have any other choice. At least we'd better try. Can you and Jamison be ready in an hour? I think so, said Nelson. We'll meet you in the courtyard. I'll have Jamison get the motor bees ready. After Euna left, Nelson pulled out his speaksy and called the guards at the main gate. We'll need a tribie and a bybie. That's right, just the two. We'll be there in about an hour. Jamison brought the motor bees out into the courtyard and unlocked the rotator blades. Flying will be quicker, said Jamison. We have more than enough fuel to make it to the main gate and back. Let me take the lead. Nelson gave a thumbs up. Goggles on, Jamison said, and gestured to Euna. Jamison maneuvered his motor bee several feet into the air and hovered while waiting for Nelson to catch up. It was still dark when they lifted out of the courtyard and flew over the main fortress wall. The lights of the city made it easy for them to see where they were going. They followed St. Murphy Boulevard from Castle Hill to the main gate at the far end of Anza. The guards had the bybie and tribie waiting for them when they arrived. Euna was grateful that Jamison had requested a tribie. It meant that she would be a passenger and not have to pedal. She was starting to feel her age, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. Nelson was young, strong, and very capable. He would pedal for hours and not notice the effort. They had just left the main gate when the pink morning sun peeked over the horizon and sent a ripple of light across the sea. Before turning south on Fish Market Road, they stopped and ate truffles, praising Corvus for their provisions. Euna hadn't wanted to wake Corvus, but the kitchen was Corvus's domain, and they needed sustenance for the journey. Corvus had packed several truffles and canteens of fresh water. She proudly added a sack of fresh chesternuts to the basket. She had recently harvested them from the garden. Over the years, the chesternuts from the tree in Castle Hill's garden had remained a favorite with the peafowl, and Corvus was no exception. It was mid-morning when they came to the path that veered off to the right. The sign read, "Turn Back Trail." "This is it. Who wants to turn back?" asked Jamison. "I would if I could," said Euna. Nelson chuckled. "Me too. I've always wondered if the name was meant as a warning or a description. I think it's meant to be a description, but most folks take it as a warning." It wasn't long before Turnback Trail disappeared into the forest. Fallen logs occasionally blocked their way, and they had to lift their vehicles over the obstacles. Soon the trail became too cumbersome for them to traverse on wheels, so they hid their rides nearby, secured them to a tree, and continued on foot. The humidity thickened, and the ground below their feet became soft and boggy. Every now and then they would catch a glimpse of a body of water through the trees. "What's that smell?" asked Euna. "It's the Sourbelly Sink," said Jamison, "that stagnant, scum-covered lake you see off to the right." "It's awful," added Nelson. "I hope the stench doesn't kill us." Sourbelly Sink was one of the many lakes located within Valendale Forest. While all of the other lakes in the forest were idyllic destinations, Sourbelly Sink was the one place to avoid. Its repulsive stench and other undesirable characteristics were the reasons why Calixta had chosen it to be her home. It was fed by a fresh water stream, but nothing ever escaped. The water seeped into the ground as fast as it flowed in from the stream. It was essentially a cesspool. The forest sent a steady stream of decay, debris, carcasses, and minerals into the lake. Gaseous fumes bubbled and popped on the surface. At night, the vapors emitted a green and purple phosphorescent glow. The sight was extremely eerie and beautiful at the same time. Onion trees thrived in the swampy shallows. Their thick, bulbous bases rose 8 to 10 feet out of the water before tapering up to thin trunks, giving the impressions of large onions. Their main trunks then branched out into a canopy with spindly boughs. The onion trees didn't produce an abundance of leaves, but they were laden with spiderweb moss. All of the trees around Sourbelly Sink dripped with the stringy, pale green parasite. It flourished on the moist, acrid air. It was enchanting to look at from a distance, but passers-by who grazed it quickly learned that it left a sticky rosin on their skin and clothes that was hard to remove. They continued on the soggy path until they came to a small cut in the trees that went toward the lake. "This is it," said Jamison, pointing to the path. "I've never been any further than this." "Then, whatever lies ahead, we will have to learn about it together. Let's go deliver this note," Euna said begrudgingly. Their new path lay along the center of a narrow peninsula that jutted into the lake. The swamp closed in until it was only a few feet away on either side of them. The finger of land continued to narrow until they were required to walk single file. The path ended at the edge of the water, where they were faced with a short stretch of stepping stones that barely broke the surface of the oily swamp. Beyond the stones was a lofty, craggy island with a large, prominent, protruding rock formation. The rugged outcropping had steep, moss-covered walls that jutted abruptly skyward. The island was protected on all sides by the murky, bubbling water. The only apparent way to access the island was by crossing the channel using the stepping stones. Across the way, the path connected to a set of steps that had been carved into the sloping sides of the outcrop. They spiraled upward around the rocky face until they reached the top. Situated at the summit was a round stone tower. It was far from impressive. The tower was no more than 15 feet wide and not twice that tall. There was a single door, but there were no windows to be seen. "So, this is it," Euna said flatly. She was both surprised and disappointed. As she gazed upon the tower, it finally sunk in that this was Calixta's domain, and it would be wise to proceed with caution. "This may be one of those times when it's best not to judge a book by its cover. Who wants to go first?" Who wants to go first across those stepping stones to get over to Calixta's place? I don't know. I'm not raising my hand.
No.
Yeah, at Sourbelly Sink, right? So here we go. We have new characters, trying to develop them very fast. Beatrice, who is obviously a queen. She's at Castle Hill, and so that's established. Obviously, there's this person named Calixta. What do you think about Calixta?
Scary.
She does seem scary, wicked. She's done obviously some bad things, those shameful dark arts, and being basically the boogeyman. If you are bad, the Calixta's coming after you.
That's right. Very fun. A whole new journey for everybody to go on now. Yet another. Good stuff.
It is. This is, stories within stories. And so those that have listened this far know that when you turned the page and got into chapter 9 and Cedric and Gethric were suddenly totally new, we went through a few chapters and we got to like all of that, right? Well, here we go again. And it's all very complex. And of course, it's not for any other reason other than we're building a story and a backstory. And so just stay with us. I find this particular chapter extremely intense for me. I find it to be intense.
Yeah, it was. I agree.
And it's all boiling down to Beatrice's worry. She doesn't have a child. She needs an heir. And so she wants that child really bad. And so for whatever reason, she needs it to rain. And the analogy, of course, is if a rain cloud is supposed to rain, then a woman is, quote unquote, supposed to have a baby. So that's her logic here. And she believes Calixta might be an answer to this.
We'll see.
You said it right. We will see how this rolls when we come back and we continue with what's happening in this story. We've left off with Nelson, Jamison, and Euna at the Sourbelly Sink. And when we come back, we will see what happens and transpires right there in the swamp.
Yep. See you next time.